Before there was Modern Family, there was America's most dysfunctional clan terrorizing Fox's airwaves with their crass humor and anti-family values. From celebrity guest stars threatening directors with guns to future royalty making secret cameos, the Bundy household hid some truly bizarre secrets behind those laugh tracks. What started as a show nobody wanted became a cultural phenomenon filled with more chaos off camera than on it. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about Married with Children, 1987. Fact 1. The show's working title was Not the Cosbys. When creators Ron Levitt and Michael G. Moy first pitched their idea for a dysfunctional family sitcom in 1986, they didn't hold back on their intentions. The original working title for what would become Married with Children was actually Not the Cosbys, serving as a direct and unapologetic mockery of the wholesome family entertainment that dominated television screens during the mid-1980s. This wasn't just a throwaway joke title either. The creators were making a deliberate statement about the direction they wanted their show to take, positioning it as the complete opposite of everything that made The Cosby Show so beloved by mainstream audiences. While Bill Cosby's television family represented the ideal of American family values, with loving parents who solved problems through wisdom and understanding, Levitt and Moy wanted to create something that would turn those expectations completely upside down. The timing couldn't have been more perfect for such a radical departure from family-friendly programming. The Cosby Show was at the height of its popularity, consistently ranking as the #1 show on television and setting the standard for what networks considered acceptable family entertainment. Other shows like Family Ties and Growing Pains followed similar formulas, featuring caring parents and children who learned valuable life lessons by the end of each episode. Fox executives, led by Garth Ancier, actively encouraged this rebellious approach. They specifically told the creators to be as outrageous as they could possibly be, doing the sort of material that the big three networks would never allow on the air. This directive gave Levitt and Moy the creative freedom to develop characters who were selfish, crude, and completely uninterested in traditional family bonding. The Not the Cosbys title perfectly captured the show's mission to present a family that argued constantly and solved their problems through insults rather than heartfelt conversations. While they eventually settled on the more subtle title, Married with Children, that original working title revealed exactly what kind of television revolution they were planning to unleash on unsuspecting audiences. Fact 2. Sam Kinison was first offered Al's role. Before Ed O'Neill ever slumped his shoulders and walked through the Bundy front door, the creators of Married with Children had their sights set on two very different performers to play Al and Peggy. Controversial stand-up comedian Sam Kinison and future sitcom star Roseanne Barr were originally offered the lead roles, but both declined the opportunity that would eventually launch the careers of ONeal and Katie Sagal. The original concept for the show was literally described as, imagine if Roseanne Barr married Sam Kinison and they had kids, which gives you a pretty clear picture of just how wild and unpredictable the creators wanted their dysfunctional family to be. Kinison, known for his explosive delivery and controversial material about marriage and religion, seemed like a perfect fit for the bitter, defeated character of Al Bundy. However, by the time the offer came around, Roseanne was already committed to her own show, which was entering its second season and becoming a major success. Co-creator Michael G. Moy later explained their reasoning for considering these particular performers, saying, "What were we going to do? Tell Roseanne how to do her domestic goddess thing? We were going to tell Sam Kinison how to do his thing? There'd be fighting all the time." The creators realized that working with such strong-willed personalities might have created more chaos than even they were prepared to handle. When Kinison eventually did appear on the show in 1989 as Al's guardian angel in the Christmas special, It's a Bundyful Life, he proved just how chaotic things could have been if he had been a regular cast member. On his first day on set, Kinison mooned the entire cast and crew, which was so poorly received that he invited everyone to his birthday dinner at the upscale restaurant Spago to make amends. The following day, he showed up late to the set and apologized by having strippers serve lunch to the cast and crew. The situation escalated even further when Kinison waved a gun and threatened to shoot director Jerry Cohen after the director went to Kinison's house late one night looking for his girlfriend, who was friends with the volatile comedian. Producer Richard Gurman later wrote that Kinison's attention-getting antics provided eye-opening examples of what working with him on a regular basis would have been like. Fact 3. Michael Richards auditioned for Al Bundy. Among the many actors who tried out for the role of Al Bundy during the casting process in 1986, one audition stood out as particularly memorable, though not necessarily for the right reasons. Michael Richards, who would later become famous for his portrayal of the eccentric Kramer on Seinfeld, auditioned for the lead role that would eventually go to Ed O'Neill, and his performance left quite an impression on the casting team. Mark Hirschfeld, the casting director responsible for finding the perfect actor to play the bitter shoe salesman, described Richards' audition as very odd, which suggests that even by the unconventional standards they were looking for in this anti-family sitcom, Richards brought something unexpected to his interpretation of the character. At the time of the audition, Richards was already an established performer with experience in both television and film, having appeared on shows like Fridays, which was ABC's attempt to compete with Saturday Night Live. The exact details of what made Richards' audition so unusual haven't been fully revealed, but given his later reputation for physical comedy and bizarre character choices as Kramer, it's easy to imagine that he brought a level of manic energy and unpredictable behavior that might have been too much even for a show designed to push boundaries. The character of Al Bundy required an actor who could convey deep frustration and resignation while still maintaining the audience's sympathy, and Richards' more explosive comedic style might not have been the right fit for that particular emotional range. Ironically, Hirschfeld would later put Richards' oddness to much better use when he cast him as Kramer in Seinfeld, proving that what didn't work for one iconic television character was absolutely perfect for another. This casting decision worked out incredibly well for both shows, as Richards' unique brand of physical comedy and eccentric timing became one of the defining elements of Seinfeld's success. The fact that Richards was even considered for Al Bundy shows just how wide the net was cast during the search for the right actor to anchor this groundbreaking sitcom, and it highlights how different the show might have been with a completely different approach to the central character's personality and comedic style. Fact 4. The kids were completely recast. The pilot episode of Married with Children that audiences eventually saw on April 5, 1987, wasn't actually the first version that was filmed, because the producers made the dramatic decision to completely recast both of the Bundy children after watching the initial footage. The original pilot, which was taped on December 12, 1986, featured two different young actors in the roles that would eventually make Christina Applegate and David Faustino household names. Tina Caspary was originally cast as Kelly Bundy, while Hunter Carson played the role of Bud, and both actors completed filming their scenes for what everyone thought would be the show's debut episode. However, when the producers and network executives reviewed the footage, they realized that something crucial was missing from the family dynamic they were trying to create. The chemistry between Ed O'Neill and Katie Sagal as the parents was working perfectly, but the addition of the original child actors somehow made the kids seem too vulnerable for the harsh, comedic tone the show was aiming to achieve. This was an expensive and time-consuming problem to fix, because it meant that every single scene featuring the Bundy children had to be completely reshot with new actors. The producers couldn't simply edit around the original performances or replace just one of the kids, since the family interactions were so central to the show's concept. Instead, They had to bring back the entire cast, rebuild the sets, and essentially film a second pilot episode with the new young performers. Christina Applegate, who was chosen to replace Caspary as Kelly, initially wasn't even interested in auditioning for the role because she found the script disgusting when she first read it. However, after watching the original pilot episode, she had a change of heart and decided to try out for the part. David Faustino, who was only 13 years old at the time, took over the role of Bud from Carson. The recasting decision proved to be absolutely crucial to the show's eventual success, as the chemistry between all four family members became one of the defining elements that made Married with Children work as both a parody of traditional family sitcoms and as genuine entertainment in its own right. Fact 5. Opening credits feature National Lampoon's Vacation. For 11 seasons, millions of viewers watched the opening credits of Married with Children without realizing they were actually looking at footage from a completely different movie that had been released 4 years earlier. The aerial highway shot that appears during the show's opening sequence, showing cars driving along a busy interstate interchange, was taken directly from the 1983 comedy film National Lampoon's Vacation, starring Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo. This wasn't just a case of using similar-looking footage either, because if you know what to look for, you can actually spot the Griswold family's distinctive station wagon right there in the shot. The green and brown Ford Crown Victoria, which the movie dubbed the Wagon Queen family truckster, is clearly visible among the other vehicles traveling down the highway, making this one of the most hidden movie references in television history. The decision to use this particular piece of footage was likely a practical one. Since filming aerial highway shots can be expensive and time-consuming, especially for a new show on a fledgling network that was trying to keep production costs under control. Rather than hiring helicopters and coordinating with traffic authorities to get their own footage of Chicago area highways, the producers simply licensed the existing shot from National Lampoon's Vacation and incorporated it into their opening credits sequence. What makes this choice particularly interesting is that it connects two very different types of family comedies from the same era. National Lampoon's Vacation was about a well-meaning father trying to create perfect family memories through a cross-country road trip, while Married with Children was about a family that could barely stand to be in the same room together. The fact that footage from a movie about family bonding ended up in the opening of a show about family dysfunction creates an unintentional irony that perfectly captures the contrast between traditional family entertainment and the new direction that Married with Children was taking. This hidden connection remained largely unnoticed by viewers for years, until dedicated fans started freeze-framing the opening credits and spotting the familiar vehicle that had become iconic from the Vacation movie series. Fact 6. Buck the dog had serious behavioral issues. While Buck the Bundy family dog became one of the most beloved characters on Married with Children, his real-life behavior on set created some seriously awkward situations that nearly cost him his job on the show. Katie Sagal, who played Peggy Bundy, had constant issues with Buck trying to hump her leg during filming, and this wasn't just an occasional problem that happened during scenes, but something that occurred both on camera and off camera throughout the production. The situation became so problematic that the show's producers actually threatened to fire Buck if his owner and handler couldn't get his inappropriate behavior under control. This was a significant threat because Buck had already become an integral part of the show's dynamic, and writing out the family pet would have required major script changes and disappointed fans who had grown attached to the character. Buck was a purebred Briard sheepdog whose real name was actually Mike, and he was owned and trained by Stephen Ritt, who had gotten the dog for free from a wealthy owner who didn't feel right about taking money for him. Ritt had spent 18 months training Buck and getting him accustomed to working around lots of people and noise before he ever appeared on camera, but apparently controlling his romantic impulses around certain cast members wasn't part of that training regimen. The producers were serious about their ultimatum because they couldn't afford to have filming disrupted by an overly amorous dog, especially when it was making one of their main cast members uncomfortable. They needed Buck to be professional and focused during scenes, not distracted by his attraction to Peggy Bundy's costume and character styling. Fortunately for everyone involved, Ritt was eventually able to get Buck's behavior under better control, allowing the dog to continue his role as the cynical family pet for 9 seasons until he was retired in 1995 due to old age. Buck appeared in 177 episodes of the show and became so popular that when he died, his character was reincarnated as Lucky Bundy, ensuring that the Bundy family would always have a 4-legged member to complete their dysfunctional household. Fact 7. Future Duchess Meghan Markle was a child extra. Long before she became the Duchess of Sussex and married into the British royal family, Meghan Markle made her very first television appearance as an uncredited background extra on Married with Children, sitting quietly in a school gymnasium while wearing her Catholic school uniform. The future actress appeared in Season 9's episode called The Undergraduate, which aired on May 21, 1995, when she was around 11 to 14 years old. Markle's presence on the show wasn't the result of a lucky audition or early acting ambition, but rather because her father, Thomas W. Markle, worked as the director of photography for Married with Children during most of the show's run. Thomas had started as a lighting director during the later half of Season 1 and became the show's director of photography for the remainder of the series, which meant that young Meghan spent countless hours on the set after school. In a 2013 interview, Markle described her unusual childhood experience, saying, "Every day after school for 10 years, I was on the set of Married with Children, which is a really funny and perverse place for a little girl in a Catholic school uniform to grow up." She explained that there were many times when her father would tell her to go help with craft services because certain scenes were just a little too off-color for her young eyes. Ed O'Neill, who played Al Bundy, later remembered Markle's presence on the set during a 2019 appearance on The Ellen DeGeneres Show. When shown a photo of the future Duchess, O'Neill immediately recognized her and recalled how she used to come on the set in her little Catholic school uniform when she was around 9 years old. In the actual episode, Markle can be seen most prominently near the end of The Undergraduate, where she appears sitting on the stage in the gymnasium scene as Kelly Bundy thanks her brother Bud before he reads her diary to the assembled students. Her father had apparently been bringing her to work regularly enough that the producers were comfortable having her appear as background talent when they needed young people for the school setting. Fact 8. Divine died before filming his episode. One of the most tragic behind-the-scenes stories from Married with Children involves the legendary drag performer Divine, who was scheduled to make a guest appearance in the second season finale, but never got the chance to film his scenes due to a heartbreaking twist of fate. Divine, whose real name was Harris Glenn Milstead, was cast to play Uncle Otto in the episode titled All in the Family, and he had spent an entire day at Sunset Gower Studios, rehearsing his lines and preparing for what would have been a memorable television appearance. The episode was set to tape the following day, but Divine died unexpectedly at the Regency Plaza Suites Hotel in Los Angeles during the night after his rehearsal day. This sudden tragedy occurred on March 7, 1988, just hours before he was supposed to return to the studio to film his actual scenes for the show. At the time of his death, Divine was only 42 years old and had been experiencing significant success in both his drag career and his transition into mainstream acting roles. Divine had become famous through his collaborations with filmmaker John Waters in movies like Pink Flamingos and Hairspray, where his outrageous performances and fearless approach to comedy had made him a cult icon. His casting on Married with Children represented an opportunity to reach a much broader television audience and potentially open doors to more mainstream entertainment projects. The cause of Divine's death was later determined to be heart failure, related to an enlarged heart condition, which had been worsened by his significant weight and the physical demands of his energetic performance style. He had been dealing with health issues for some time, but his sudden passing still came as a shock to everyone who had been working with him on the show. The producers of Married with Children decided to dedicate the second season finale episode to Divine's memory, acknowledging both his planned contribution to the show and his broader impact on entertainment. This dedication served as a tribute to a performer who had pushed boundaries and challenged conventional ideas about gender and performance, qualities that would have fit perfectly with the rebellious spirit that Married with Children was trying to bring to television. Fact 9. The lost episode was too racy for Fox. Even though Married with Children was known for pushing the boundaries of what was acceptable on television, there was one episode that went too far even for Fox's standards, creating what became known as the lost episode that disappeared from television for over a decade. I'll See You in Court was filmed on January 6, 1989, with a planned air date of February 19, 1989, but it never made it to television screens because of an unprecedented battle between the network and the show's producers over its sexual content. The episode's plot involved Al and Peggy trying to spice up their marriage by having sex at a sleazy motel called the Hop-On Inn, where they discover that they've been secretly videotaped during their intimate moments, just like their neighbors Steve and Marcy, who had also been recorded at the same location. The storyline was built around more sexual jokes and references than even the typical Married with Children episode, which was already considered quite racy for late 1980s television. The timing of this episode couldn't have been worse for Fox, because the network was already dealing with a boycott campaign led by activist Terry Racolta, who had been organizing sponsors to pull their advertising from the show after being offended by earlier episodes. Fox's Broadcast Standards Department demanded 15 changes to the script before they would allow it to air, which was an unusually high number since most episodes only required 2 or 3 minor adjustments. The producers agreed to 13 of the requested changes but refused to compromise on the remaining 2. And when Fox continued to push for more alterations, the creative team made the decision to pull the episode entirely rather than damage what they felt was their artistic vision. This was a costly decision, because the episode had already been fully filmed and edited, but the producers felt that making the additional changes would have hurt the episode creatively and set a dangerous precedent for future network interference. I'll See You in Court remained unaired in the United States until June 18, 2002, when FX became the first network to broadcast it, though even then it was shown in an edited format. The full, uncensored version could only be seen on DVD releases. Fact 10. The 7 character vanished without explanation. Sometimes, when television shows try to shake up their established formula by adding new characters, the results can backfire spectacularly, and Married with Children provided one of the most memorable examples of this phenomenon when they introduced a child character who became so unpopular that he simply vanished from the show without any explanation. In the Season 7 premiere episode titled Magnificent Seven, the Bundy family was forced to take care of a young boy named Seven after his parents, Peggy's cousins Zemus and Ida Mae, dropped him off at their house and never returned. Seven was supposed to add a new dynamic to the established family structure and give the writers fresh storylines to explore, but the character proved to be a major miscalculation that disrupted the carefully balanced chemistry that had made the show successful for 6 seasons. The hyperactive child, who was portrayed as annoying and demanding, didn't fit well with the established personalities of the other family members, and audiences quickly grew tired of his presence on the show. Rather than finding a creative way to write Seven out of the series through a proper storyline that would explain his departure, the producers made the unusual decision to simply stop using the character altogether and hope that viewers wouldn't notice or care about his sudden absence. The character was briefly mentioned in one episode where the Darcys mentioned that he had showed up at their house and wouldn't leave, suggesting they might start taking care of him, but even that explanation was quickly abandoned. The most memorable acknowledgement of Seven's disappearance came during Season 8, when the character's face appeared on a milk carton as a missing child, but this reference was treated as a throwaway joke rather than a serious plot point. The Bundy family members showed no concern about Seven's apparent disappearance, which perfectly captured the show's dark sense of humor, while also acknowledging that the character had been quietly removed from the series. This situation became a classic example of what happens when new characters are introduced too late in a show's run. Similar to other infamous television disappearances like Chuck Cunningham walking upstairs in Happy Days and never being seen again. Fact 11. Ed O'Neill found out about cancellation from fans. After 11 successful seasons and 259 episodes, Married with Children came to an abrupt end in 1997, but the way the cast and crew learned about the show's cancellation was almost as shocking as the decision itself. Fox made the announcement about ending the series to the public and the media, before bothering to inform the people who had actually been making the show for over a decade, creating an awkward and unprofessional situation that left everyone involved feeling disrespected. Ed O'Neill, who had appeared in every single episode as Al Bundy, found out about the cancellation in the most casual way possible while he was on vacation. He was sitting somewhere relaxing when he overheard a couple nearby talking about a newspaper article they had read that announced the end of Married with Children, which was how the star of the show discovered that his job had been eliminated. This communication breakdown wasn't limited to just the main cast members either, because most of the crew and supporting actors also learned about the cancellation from fans, entertainment reporters, or low-level network employees, rather than from the Fox executives who had made the decision. The lack of professional courtesy was particularly frustrating because the show had been expected to be renewed for a 12th and final season, which would have given everyone involved the chance to create a proper series finale and wrap up the storylines in a satisfying way. Katie Sagal, who played Peggy Bundy, later expressed her feelings about how Fox had treated the show throughout its run, stating that she constantly felt the series was neglected by the network, despite the fact that Married with Children had helped put Fox on the map as a legitimate television network. The show had been one of Fox's first major successes and had paved the way for other groundbreaking series, like The Simpsons. Ed O'Neill attributed the possible neglect of the series to the constant turnover in top positions at Fox, which meant that the executives who had originally championed the show were no longer around to protect it when budget cuts and programming changes became necessary. Fact 12. Christina Applegate secretly played Kelly as a virgin. While Kelly Bundy became famous for being portrayed as one of the most promiscuous characters on television, with her brother Bud frequently calling her one of the easiest girls in Chicago, Christina Applegate was actually playing the character with a completely different interpretation that she kept secret from everyone else involved in the show. In later interviews, Applegate revealed that despite all the jokes about Kelly's sexual adventures and the constant parade of boyfriends who would visit the Bundy house, she had privately decided to play Kelly as a virgin throughout the entire series. This hidden character choice was what Applegate called her little secret about Kelly, and it was something she used to add unexpected depth and complexity to what could have been a one-dimensional stereotype of the dumb blonde character. Rather than playing Kelly as someone who was actually experienced with relationships and intimacy, Applegate approached the role as if Kelly was someone who talked a big game, but was actually quite innocent underneath all the bravado and attention-seeking behavior. Applegate explained her reasoning by describing Kelly as ditzy, yeah, lazy thinker, I guess. I had to play her as a genius. In her own mind, she's a genius. And a virgin, actually. So, those are my little secrets that I had about her. She was really, kind of a product of that time. This approach allowed Applegate to find moments of vulnerability and genuine emotion in Kelly's character that might not have been there otherwise. The fact that Applegate could maintain this internal character motivation while playing scenes where Kelly was supposedly experienced with dating and relationships shows her skill as an actress and her commitment to finding depth in a character who was often written primarily for laughs. This secret interpretation also adds a layer of irony to many of Kelly's storylines, since the audience was seeing a character who appeared confident and worldly, but was actually being played as someone who was putting on an act to hide her inexperience. Applegate's approach demonstrates how actors can bring their own creative choices to roles even when those choices aren't explicitly written into the script or discussed with the other members of the creative team. Fact 13. The first sound was a toilet flushing. Before Married with Children even aired its first episode, the writers and creators faced a unique challenge in trying to figure out how to immediately communicate to audiences exactly what kind of show they were about to watch. The creative team struggled for weeks to come up with the perfect mission statement or opening dialogue that would capture the essence of their anti-family sitcom, but they couldn't find the right words to express their vision of blue-collar, low-brow humor that would set their show apart from all the wholesome family comedies on television. After extensive discussions and failed attempts at crafting the perfect opening line, the writers made an unconventional decision that would become one of the most memorable creative choices in television history. Instead of using any sort of dialogue or narration to establish the show's tone, they decided that a single sound effect would be far more effective at immediately telling viewers what they were in for during the next 30 minutes. The very first thing that audiences heard when the pilot episode of Married with Children premiered on April 5, 1987, was the sound of Al Bundy flushing a toilet, which perfectly encapsulated the show's commitment to crude, bathroom-level humor that other networks would never have allowed on the air. This opening sound served as an instant warning to viewers that they were about to watch something completely different from The Cosby Show or any other family sitcom that was popular at the time. The toilet flush was brilliant in its simplicity because it required no explanation or context to understand, and it immediately established that this show was going to focus on the less glamorous and more embarrassing aspects of family life that other programs tried to avoid or ignore completely. The sound told audiences that Married with Children would be willing to go places that other shows wouldn't dare to explore. This creative choice also demonstrated the writers' understanding that sometimes the most effective way to communicate an idea is through actions rather than words, and that a single, well-chosen sound effect could be more powerful than an entire speech about the show's intentions and philosophy. Fact 14. Al's boss, Gary, was actually a woman. One of the most absurd running gags in Married with Children involved Al Bundy's complete obliviousness to a basic fact about his workplace that should have been obvious to anyone with even minimal observation skills. For years, Al worked as a shoe salesman at a store called Gary's Shoes and Accessories for Today's Woman, when in reality Gary was actually a woman who had been running the business the entire time he had been employed there. This revelation became one of the show's most memorable moments of dark comedy because it highlighted just how disconnected Al was from the details of his own life and work environment. The fact that he could spend years working for someone without ever bothering to learn such basic information about them perfectly captured his character's self-absorption and general lack of awareness about the world around him. him. The moment when Al finally discovered the truth about Gary's gender was played for maximum comedic effect, showing his shock and confusion at learning something that everyone else had apparently known all along. This discovery was particularly ironic, given that Al was a member of an anti-feminist organization called No Ma'am, which stood for National Organization of Men Against Amazonian Masterhood, and he frequently made disparaging comments about women in positions of authority. The revelation that he had been working for a female boss without realizing it undermined his sexist attitudes and exposed the fundamental contradictions in his worldview. The joke worked on multiple levels because it showed that Al's misogynistic beliefs were based more on ignorance and assumption than on any actual understanding of the women in his life. This storyline also served as a perfect example of the show's approach to humor, which often involved taking Al's inflated sense of his own intelligence and competence and deflating it through situations that revealed just how clueless he actually was about even the most basic aspects of his daily existence. The fact that Gary's gender had been hidden in plain sight for so long made Al's eventual discovery even more embarrassing, and highlighted his tendency to see only what he expected to see, rather than what was actually in front of him. Fact 15. Ed O'Neill used to make collect calls to fans. Long before social media made it easy for celebrities to connect with their audiences, Ed O'Neill found his own unique way to reach out to Married with Children fans, but he did it in a manner that was so perfectly in character that it became almost as entertaining as the show itself. O'Neill would actually make personal phone calls to fans on special occasions like birthdays and holidays, staying completely in character as Al Bundy throughout the entire conversation, which meant that lucky recipients got to experience the grumpy shoe salesman's distinctive personality firsthand. What made these phone calls truly memorable, however, was the fact that O'Neill would only make them collect, meaning that the fans who received these special calls had to pay for the privilege of talking to their favorite television character. This detail was absolutely brilliant because it captured the essence of Al Bundy's cheapskate personality while also creating an authentic interaction that felt like something the character would actually do in real life. The collect call approach was perfectly consistent with Al's established character traits, since he was constantly looking for ways to save money and often tried to get other people to pay for things whenever possible. By making fans pay for their own birthday or holiday greetings, O'Neill was essentially extending the show's comedy beyond the television screen and into real life, creating a form of interactive entertainment that was years ahead of its time. These phone calls represented an extraordinary level of commitment to character development and fan engagement that went far beyond what most actors would consider doing for their audiences. O'Neill's willingness to spend his own time making these calls, while also staying true to Al's penny-pinching nature, showed both his dedication to the role and his understanding of what made the character so appealing to viewers. The fact that fans were apparently happy to accept collect charges just to talk to Al Bundy demonstrates the powerful connection that the show had created with its audience, and it shows how O'Neill had managed to make the character feel like a real person rather than just a fictional creation on a television show.